All right, everyone. So good to be with you. I'm Reverend Amina Bliss, and I am so happy to welcome you to Inspire Online. We have a very special service today. We have a panel conversation, and it is all about LGBTQ education and educators. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but it's something that has been on my mind for a long time, and I'm thrilled to see it come to fruition. I also am delighted to have Joseph Eid with his original music today. So that's going to be amazing. And so, just to let you know a little bit about how things are going to go today, we're going to start off with some meditation. We're going to jump into the music. We'll have the panel, and then there'll be some Q&A for the panelists and an opportunity for you to ask questions or to also share your experiences. And we do have the chat closed right now. You can chat with the co-hosts, and also you can raise your hand and use the reaction button if you want to give appreciation or if you want to ask a question during the Q&A. So here at Inspire, we meet on the second and fourth Sundays, and the next service will be October 8th with our own beloved Reverend Alfreda Lanois, who I'm so happy is here today with us to enjoy the panel and the service. And let's go into our meditation. So let's get comfortable. Let's take a deep breath of love and gratitude, breathing in love, breathing in gratitude, and exhaling everything that came before this moment. Letting go, letting go, letting go. And another deep breath in and an exhale. Just get comfortable. Allow your arms and legs to be uncrossed, feet on the floor. An open channel for spirit to flow through. And as we breathe and relax, we imagine a bright white light rotating clockwise in the center of your chest. This ball of light is about the size of a tennis ball. And as you place your attention on it, it begins to expand. This beautiful, brilliant white light fills your chest, flows up past your shoulders into your neck, filling your head, flowing down your arms into your hands and fingers. White light flowing through your body, illuminating your torso, your hips, your legs, your knees, your calves, your ankles, feet, and toes, until your entire physical body is one with this light. Every bone, every muscle, every organ, every cell, atom, and electron of your being soaked and saturated in this brilliant, beautiful white light. So just take a moment to feel the effect of this light on your physical body. The light expands beyond the body into the auric field, creating an orb around you, 3 feet all around you. You're encircled in this white light. And this light continues to expand. It fills the room you're in. It fills the building you're in, floods out onto the street, continues to flow through your neighborhood, your city, your state, your continent, seeping into the ocean and instantaneously enveloping the entire planet, uniting every living being. We are one in this light, the light of love. And so we see the planet surrounded in light. We feel every living being connected in this light. And we remember our oneness with each other and with all of life. We feel that connection to everyone and everything. And so let's take a couple of moments in the silence, breathing in love, and sending light to ourselves, to each other, and to every living being. How good it is to know ourselves as light. Mother, Father, God, divine love, infinite intelligence, all that there is. We are so grateful and thankful for this moment here and now, joining together in our beloved Inspire community, remembering our oneness and perfection with each other and with all of life. So grateful and thankful to know that everything is God and God is all there is. Love is all there is, and we are that. And so we recognize the divinity in ourselves and each other. We open ourselves up to the highest possibility for our lives and for all others. We bless this service. We know that it is perfect. We hand it over to Spirit, and we know that Spirit speaks through us and as us. That Spirit shows up as Joseph, as Annis, as Chris, as Zoe, as Tom, as everyone present. And we are so deeply grateful to align ourselves with love, to align ourselves with peace, with joy, with freedom, and with the all good, the all God. So we let go, we allow it to be, and so it is. Amen. So let's go to Reverend Tom Hennessy for our mission statement and namaste. Welcome, Reverend Tom.
Here is the mission statement. Inspire is a spiritual community of like-minded souls committed to walking our talk in joyous fellowship by demonstrating the power of love, compassion, and non-judgment every day in every way. Recognizing the divinity of all life, we stand united by actively liberating humanity by healing judgment, fear, and shame within ourselves. Our intention to create world peace, piece by piece. Whoa! Okay, back to you, Amina.
Thank you, Tom. So let us bring forward our dear friend Joseph Eid, our music inspiration today.
Thank you so much, Amina. Thank you for having me. It's always such a pleasure to be with you guys. So I'm super grateful for this community and for getting to participate every year. Today I'm going to share an original song with you all that I wrote a couple of years ago. It's on my latest album. It's called Thank You. And I'm just going to share a lyric from it that basically sums it all up. And the lyric goes like this. All you traded in for what you thought was love was just a string of faded moments that never felt enough. Did you know life had a much larger piece in store if you could only let go of the crumbs you're begging for? And when I wrote that, it was in the context of a relationship because I had met someone who is my soulmate. And it made me think about everybody else leading up to that and how I was in these moments where I wanted things to work out so badly and they weren't working out, but it was with the wrong people. And Spirit was guiding me towards something I never imagined that was so much bigger than what I was praying for and hoping for. So the gist of the song is basically, whether it's career stuff, love, anything in life, when things aren't working out and certain doors aren't opening for you, just breathe and know that maybe just life just wants to give you more than what you are currently experiencing. So just know that and just keep moving. So this song is called Thank You, and the video is by a friend of mine, Robbie Joe Banfitch, who we just took a day trip during the day and just recorded some beautiful nature scenes. And he's a filmmaker who actually has this song in one of his films. So I asked him to also direct the video.
Sorry.
This is a thank you to all those who came before, who brought doubts, who brought darkness, a desire for something more. To the fakes, to the flakes, and to every closing door. You are not mistakes, no, you're what I'm grateful for. When I walk on by with my head held high, I'm aware of the weight that I left behind. When you said no, yeah, you set me free. Didn't know that this road had something better to give me. I love you so good, I love you so bad. I see you now as two sides of the same track. I love you so good, I love you so bad. I raise a glass, I laugh when I look back. And all you traded in for what you thought was love was just a string of faded moments that never felt enough. Did you know life had a much larger piece in store? If you could only let go of the crumbs you're begging for. When you walk on by, hold your head up high, and know that all of your loss will be your light. Like a newfound key, it will set you free. To be whole, to be loved is your destiny. I love you so good, I love you so bad. I see you now as two sides of the same track. I love you so good, I love you so bad. Let's raise a glass and laugh when we look back. This is a thank you to all those who came before, who brought doubts and who brought darkness, a desire for something more. I love you so good, I love you so bad. I see you now as two sides of the same track. I love you so good, and I love you so bad. I raise a glass, I laugh when I look back. When I look back.
Joseph, that is gorgeous. I love that song. And it's such a perfect message. It's so beautiful.
Thank you so much, and thank you guys for listening and hearing it. And if I think there was like a little bit of delay with the video, so it's on YouTube if anybody wants to check out the song. Also, just wanted to share if anybody's interested in the music and wants to connect, I'm on Instagram as Joseph Eid Music, and I've got a lot of cool stuff coming up. I just got accepted as an official showcase artist in Far West, which is Folk Alliance Region West, which is an amazing music conference that celebrates community and great music. So just follow me and get the info. The show is on October 13th, and I'd love to see you there. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Joseph. And we've got a lot of love here in the comments to me. Reverend Alfreda says, beautifully beautiful. Asila says, gorgeous song. Thank you. And we just so appreciate you being here with us. It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much,
My
Joseph.
pleasure. Thank you.
All right, folks. I just want to share, it's really lovely when you get an idea and it doesn't go away. And so I had this thought that kind of started with Chris and his book. And then I thought about my mom, and then I thought about Zoe, and I kind of thought, oh, this is kind of crazy. Like, should I ask them about this? And so one by one, I just kind of floated the idea, and each one was so receptive. And here we are a few months later, and we're ready to have this conversation. So I'm really thrilled to share with you today's panel, and it is entitled 3 Generations of LGBTQ Educators, How Much Has Changed. The first panelist is Annis Cassells. Annis Cassells is a writer, life coach, and career teacher who published her second volume of poetry, What the Country Wrought, this year. A former middle school teacher, she now conducts memoir writing classes for senior adults. A native of Detroit, Annis lives half-time in California and in Oregon with her wife, Judy. They have been a couple for 25 years, married in 2004 and again in 2008. Annis loves connecting with people and aims to continue making a difference in today's world. She certainly does that. Chris Tompkins is our second panelist. Chris Tompkins is an LGBTQ affirming therapist who specializes in gay men's identity. He is the author of the best-selling book, Raising LGBTQ Allies, A Parent's Guide to Changing the Messages from the Playground. He's also an educator, speaker, and a regular guest on popular podcasts. More importantly, Chris says he is an uncle of 5 and believes the privilege of a lifetime is being able to affirm all children for who they are. And Zoe Anthony Shay is our third panelist. Zoe Anthony Shay is an audio engineer, arts educator, and spiritual practitioner based in Los Angeles. He has a decade of experience in education, including museum programming, orchestras, private lessons, and teaching in classrooms throughout LAUSD. Please welcome all of our panelists, and Annis Cassells will begin the presentation.
Thank you, Amina, and thank you, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be with you today. Since I have been in the teaching business, I had a career that spanned 4 decades, from 1965 to 1999. So I'll go first and talk about how it was then and how it was throughout my career. So in the early days, I was a PE major, and so of course PE majors are always suspect. But I was also a married PE teacher, and some of our other students were married, and some of our instructors were married. So we didn't think too much about that. But we knew when we went out to teach that folks, there was a stigma and that people needed to be really careful. One of my first principals was a woman named Louise Ritzema, and she had all the characteristics that we know, and she had a housemate named Velma, and she made sure we knew it was a housemate, and she made sure that we knew when she invited several people over, staff members over to her place, that she gave us a tour of the house, and she very carefully and dramatically pointed out, this is Velma's room, because there was that fear of being fired and being ostracized and just totally being unable to continue with your life's work. That was a reality then. In Bakersfield in 1974, I was 31 years old, and that is when I came out to myself. The issues were the same. We were still very afraid of losing our jobs. And the other fear was, for me, having two young daughters, that I would lose my children. And so with those fears being prevalent and back at the top of mind all the time, we just really had to be very careful. So I, talked to my girls about keeping quiet about things at our house, not telling the family business, because I didn't want any repercussions from that. Again, worried about losing them, worried about losing my work. And so that was kind of hard on them. I know that, because they were children and there were things that were not talked about, not discussed. And I was very guarded at school, guarded with colleagues, and tried to avoid anyone that was going to be too nosy, or anyone also who might be gay, because it was known that felt that if you associated with someone who was gay, those things. There were no safeguards for kids except by individual teacher. But in the 1990s, GLSEN, GLSEN, formed by a group of teachers in Massachusetts. And by then we started to have conversations as chapters formed about keeping kids safe and providing spaces for them where they could not be bullied and be taken care of. And so regardless of who I was at the time, that was my main job, was to take care of those children and their safety at school. Today, there's all kinds of activities that GLSEN has really expanded. There are 43 throughout the United States, one in Los Angeles. There are all kinds of programs that are there for supporting gay children, gay and lesbian children, and also supporting teachers and staff. I think that's all I need to say right now. But, I will say, at that time, of course, there was no discussion about transgender or non-binary, none at all. Those terms were to come later. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris Tompkins, sorry, Chris.
Yes, hello, hi. Thank you so much, Anis. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Amina, for your thought that you had in reaching out. It's so good to be here. I love Inspire. I love this community. And I wanted to share a little bit about my experience, both as a teacher and then also as a student, because I recently finished graduate school, and it was an experience I think that is important to this conversation. But I got my start teaching social emotional learning throughout LA at after school programs in about 2015. And I would go to after school programs. So sometimes there were high schools that we would go to, often after school programs. I started teaching at Central Juvenile Hall for 2 years. I taught there, and at Penny Lane, which is a child welfare organization. So for youth that were in foster care. I also taught at the LGBT Center for LGBTQ youth that were unhoused. And so we brought our curriculum, it's called Tilly's Life Center, and basically teaching youth social emotional learning skills, self-empowerment, how to connect to their purpose. And one of the ways that I started teaching at Juvenile Hall is I was at a conference for youth, people who work with youth, that Penny Lane organizes once a year. It's called EDGY. And once a year, they have a conference that's dedicated to LGBTQ, anyone who works with youth, and it has a specific focus on LGBTQ youth. And I was in a workshop, and before the workshop started, a gentleman who was sitting next to me raised his hand and stood up and said that he worked at Central Juvenile Hall, and that there was a Catholic minister who would come and speak with the youth and every so often volunteer. And upon learning that one of the youth was transgender, he walked, and this person was sharing this story in front of everyone in the workshop, and he walked up to the young woman and placed her hand on her heart and said, "You need an exorcism, may God be with you." And so he asked, it was sort of his call to action of asking for support. They needed support in Juvenile Hall. So I approached him after the workshop, and I introduced myself, and I was like, I would love to, we teach this program called Tilly's Life Center. We'd love to help support, the youth. And so I started working with Juvenile Hall, both with the clinicians and the staff, and then also with the youth. And, in my experience, even though I'm, a lot older than a lot of the youth that were there, I still heard the same messages that I received, that I heard about, as a young person. I didn't come out until I was older, but I knew that I was gay from a very young age. So for me, it was about hiding my identity. And what I started to learn as an educator is that it wasn't so much, terms like homophobia, transphobia. It was more of, and this is what I love bringing this conversation to this community, is that it was, for me, it was more of unlearning the beliefs that I had internalized. And so not so much about homophobia, transphobia, more about misguided beliefs, the belief systems that we sort of just take on by virtue of being socialized in a dominant culture. And so the curriculum, what I started to notice is that for me, it was really important. I love, again, bringing the spiritual perspective, is that, we learn from A Course in Miracles that, we're all teachers, and that we teach through our demonstration. And so I started to realize that as a gay man myself, what am I teaching through my demonstration? And so not necessarily I was there to teach specifically LGBTQ related subject matter, but I was there as a teacher about my life. And so because I really do believe that for youth, for anyone to learn, we have to be able to be vulnerable. And for LGBTQ youth, they can't be vulnerable without feeling safe. And so what am I doing as an educator to sort of create safe spaces for there to be conversations? So I started to work with the program because a lot of the material was written from a very heteronormative perspective, feedback, heteronormative perspective. And so, for example, a class that we would teach, we would have the youth talk about characters, like cheerleaders, bullies, like different things that were very common for most of us if we think back to high school. But they were all written through a heteronormative. So the characters were male, female. And so I started work with the organization about including, because I feel like it's really important to be able to have a youth see themselves. That's why books and everything are so important, to be able to see themselves in the stories and the material. And just really quickly, kind of shifting over to my own experience in graduate school, I went to a really, really wonderful school here in Los Angeles. And they're very social justice informed and very open. And I was there to learn. I was in school for clinical psychology. And what I found was interesting is that in classes that were required for all of us, childhood development as an example, is that unless we were in a class that was dedicated specifically to LGBTQ matters, there wasn't really a lot of inclusion. So for example, for me as a clinician, I had to take childhood development, and I was learning about childhood development from a very, again, heteronormative perspective, even at a school that was very open and affirming. And so for me, that's why this conversation I feel like is very timely, because I do feel like there has been tremendous progress and the things that have happened over the years, and there's still more work to do. And so even myself as a gay man in a class, I found myself having conversations with clinicians who are being trained right now from a very big, heteronormative, this is what childhood development looks like from a male, female, brain development, those kinds of things. And so being able to include other identities to be able to inform the beliefs that we're, clinicians who maybe aren't necessarily LGBTQ themselves, but are learning about childhood development from a very heteronormative perspective. And so I feel like my role as an educator, as a teacher, is also as an advocate. And so what am I doing to help advocate for identities for youth to be able to be included in classrooms and to be seen? So that's why I'm grateful for this conversation. I think one of the ways that we can do that is really by creating authentic and affirming spaces, and that starts with myself. And so I look at my work as an advocate, as a teacher, similarly to my spiritual practice. How much am I, it's really important for me to have a daily practice, because fear will sneak in. And similarly, as a teacher, as an educator, as an advocate, fear can sneak in as well. So it's really important for me to be mindful and aware. So I'm glad to be here. So I'll pass it over to Zoe.
Hello. I believe I unmuted myself. Yeah. My name is Zoe. I am the third of the generations represented here. And I started teaching about 10 years ago, or over 10 years ago. I was in an education role, even in high school, doing working in an educational summer camp. But I really started as a teacher in the classroom 9 or 10 years ago. And I was hearing you, Chris, say the fear, and Annis as well. As a trans educator, there's a lot of fear even now, even before all the Trump rhetoric and the politics that we have right now about books and being allowed to mention queer people in the classroom. Prior to this, there was a lot of fear for me as an educator going into the school system. I think one thing, and it's interesting because it reminds me of being in school as well, where there was a lot of fear. And one thing that was a saving grace was having a teacher who was like, let's talk about it, and one thing that was lovely, at least for me, was that my teacher who gave me the space to be myself and talk about these things wasn't even queer. But for someone just to open up that space was really important for me as a teenager. And so it's interesting because for me as an educator now, when I was working with queer high schoolers, I was creating that space. But when I was working as a music educator and as a music teacher, I have this fear that I don't mention anything, right? Because I have this fear that either the parents will get upset or the administration will get upset, because this has happened to me before, where I was working in a middle school, an LAUSD public school, and I experienced transphobia from my coworkers, from other staff at the school. And an interesting conversation we were having getting ready for this panel was that I've only ever received trouble from other staff members, which has been really interesting. And I thank you, Chris, for your work with educators, because people need this training. And so it's been really interesting, both teaching private music lessons outside of the school system, and then teaching classes within the school system, where some of my private students, their parents are like, hey, Zoe, like, what pronouns do you use? Or, hey, like, what do you want to be called something different? Just giving me the space to be myself, and I'm able to have those conversations with students. And so with having the fear of bringing my verbalizing my queerness, or just approaching these topics, one way I've found that I'm able to bring myself into my work is just by being myself and giving my students the space to be themselves. So that I'm not like, hey, are you gay? That's cool, just to let you know. Like, I never say something like that, but it's when something comes up with the kid, if they're being silly or they want to talk about something, I give them the space to do that. One thing that we were talking about, again, in preparing for this panel, is the importance of queer educators. And that's one thing that I've experienced, is it's not about necessarily bringing queerness into the classroom, but it's about allowing space for queerness into the classroom. That is so powerful, because students love talking to me. Like, middle school girls will tell me all of their secrets. And, one of my private students recently was telling me that he was getting bullied at camp. And I've realized it's because I allow this space for that vulnerability, for them to be able to talk to me about whatever it is they need or want. And so, again, thank you for this space. It's been really interesting, and I think it's really powerful to have queer educators in our classrooms, in our reform systems, in our spiritual centers, to give space for our kids to have that exploration of self.
And not just that, Zoe, thank you so much for that, but not just that, because it was a fellow queer teacher who taught me how to be able to be who I was. It took 20 years of hiding out in the classroom, but hiding out about who I was. But when I transferred to a school, and I had a colleague named Whitney Woodell, Whitney was out and proud for many years. She got outed by the custodian at the school, who found something that she had left on her desk or on the chalkboard or something. And so, but she had faced no repercussions from the school district. And this must have been in maybe the early 1990s. And so seeing Whitney go ahead and just be who she was without having any issues or any problems was helpful to some of the rest of us who were still way back and afraid. And so again, it was Whitney who I became friends with, who gave me the courage and also gave me the model of how I could walk in the world at school.
Yeah, I think I love that. And I think, for me too, it's about, and what I'm hearing is like allyship and the importance of allies. So this conversation is kind of multi-layered. And, one of the things that I often think about is, what about the other kids who aren't LGBTQ, but maybe have, certain, like, what role are they playing? And, I started, Amina mentioned, she read earlier, but I'm an uncle. I have 5 nieces and nephews, and I'm from Arizona. So Arizona is a very different state than California. And I found myself, ever since I have 4 nieces and nephews who are teenagers. One is 11, but soon enough, she'll be a teenager. But I started having conversations with my nieces and nephews. Often we think that having uncomfortable conversations with children at a young age will put them at risk. I believe it's the opposite. Having uncomfortable conversations with children at a young age actually keeps them from risk. And so I started asking my nieces and nephews questions, talking to them. And I remember a conversation I had with my brother's children. He has a son and a daughter. And I asked them, if this was while they were in middle school. And I asked them, so do you have any, LGBTQ friends? Or is there anyone at your school, who's LGBTQ? And they both were like, no, we don't know anyone. And I'm like, really? At your whole school, there's no one who's LGBTQ? And we had many conversations about, the L, the G, the B, and I remember asking my nephew, I said, do you think that maybe there are kids who are LGBTQ, but maybe they just don't feel safe about sharing themselves? And they both were like, yeah, maybe. And I asked, like, well, what do you think that maybe you could do to help others feel safe, if there are kids who are, maybe are LGBTQ? And so just having those conversations with my niece and nephews, about allyship and even themselves, because one of the things I think about with my own family is, we don't know if one of the children in our families is LGBTQ. Gender, sexuality, those things are a journey. We arrive at different places in our lives, and so being able to cultivate and just expand. I love, again, bringing the spirituality, like expanding our awareness, opening our minds and our hearts to the possibility that kind of, to Zoe's point, creates that space that we can all kind of, enter into, and children can be who they are, whatever that is.
And you bring up allyship, Chris. That's so important, because the people who are involved and embroiled can't do a whole lot, because they attract ire or displeasure from the people who, quote, are against them. But it's the allies who can explain, who can find ways to talk to people, to bring awareness to people. And those who are against us, so to speak, will take it much more readily from the allies who they see, trust, or are aware of, or who help, or in some way. So allyship is really, really important. I think you're doing a good job of building that with your nieces and nephews.
Yeah, I have experienced that as well. When I started experiencing transphobia in that school, it was just a little bit. And I told my boss, I said, you need to bring a training in here for these teachers, because this happened, not that bad, but it's going to get worse. And I have no problem with any kids, but it's going to transfer to the kids. And it's going to be a bad working environment for me. And she said, oh, they're not ready. No, we can't do that now. That's like, it's too soon to do that. And I was right, of course. And things escalated, but had she, and me speaking up for myself was A, really hard, and B, yeah, you feel like you're not taken seriously, because you're like, if you're saying, hey, you hurt my feelings, and hey, this is not okay. And people hear that as like, oh, you hurt my feelings. But when someone is coming from a place of allyship, or we're coming from a place of preparedness rather than defense, I think we're able to have more people take those conversations more seriously when they're proactive conversations, because you're saying, hey, what if this were to happen? Or, hey, let's talk about this topic, rather than, hey, you did something that does not sit well with me. Now people are on the defense, and they want to fight you, or they're saying, you're telling me I'm wrong or I'm bad, where you're like, it's not about you, it's about the behavior, or it's about the rhetoric that we're talking about. And I think, yeah, that conversation on allyship is really, really important. Yeah, especially in the students. And that vulnerability, I think that, we touched on that, of giving space to kids to be who they are, no matter who they are, whether they're queer or not queer, because we know that, the cis hetero patriarchy affects and it hurts non-queer people. It hurts all of us. And so whether it's giving a child room to explore their queerness or gender, or it's just giving, a cis straight student a little bit of room to be glamorous, because that is true too, and that happens as well.
And I love that. And I think, and this is so, to me, encouraging and inspiring, because, I often think, like, even if we're not all of us who are here are teachers. Again, I love Course in Miracles. We teach through our demonstration, and so all of us, that I think the call to action too is, I started volunteering. Maybe some of you have heard of PFLAG, but they're wonderful, wonderful. They have chapters throughout the country, and I started working with them on their speakers bureau. So PFLAG, one of the forms of advocacy that they have is they go into schools. Oftentimes a school will call, and either maybe there was some bullying that the teachers became aware of, and so they wanted to invite PFLAG to come in, or it was just more of just awareness raising. But I started to notice, and I've been part of PFLAG Speakers Bureau as long as I've taught social emotional learning. And one of the things that was so amazing to me is that we would go into a school, and there was usually they like to have everyone represented, usually 4 or 5 people. So trying to have a mix of various, identities, and each of us would share about 5 minutes, our personal story coming out, and then we would open it up to a discussion. And what was so fascinating to me is that even though my experience, the youth in the classroom maybe couldn't relate to me meeting my first boyfriend and falling in love, and that was part of my coming out story, they would ask questions afterwards because they could relate to the human experience of what it was like to have a crush on someone. And so what I always found was what was really beautiful is that we maybe couldn't relate to the specifics, but we could relate to the human experience and the emotions and the feelings. And then that kind of starts to open the mind to oh, they're seeing me as a fellow human, not so much as the label of gay. And that label having those sort of unconscious beliefs that are associated with what that word means, that we all have about everything based on where we were raised and how we were brought up. So I encourage anyone out there, volunteer with PFLAG.
I guess we would also like to open it up for questions that we can answer. I know one comment that I have that I thought was really interesting is talking with Anis about her experience and being worried about being fired. And I know that that's still a fear for people. I've had that fear of violence in the workplace, but also I know that that's a very real fear right now for teachers who are getting fired and who are not getting fired, but are queer or even allied teachers that are working in our schools and still, decades later, worried about if they're vocal, will they lose their job? And so that's just one observation that I had in this panel that I thought was really interesting. But there is hope, So I don't know if anyone has comments or questions for any one of us or all of us. We'd love to open the floor to that.
Thank you, Zoe, Anis, and Chris. And yes, if anyone has questions, use the raise hand feature and the reactions, and I will call on you to unmute. Questions or comments or shared experiences?
I just want to say that my sister is a high school teacher in New York, and she's a straight woman who some of the stories she told me about the last district she worked in were really scary and mostly had to do with her coworkers and prejudices and just comments and of where she comes from or this and that, and just really unconscious kind of level of educators, which was shocking to me. And I'm thinking these are people teaching children, and I just hearing the three of you speak, I'm just so impressed, and also think it takes so much courage to be LGBTQ educator in today's world. And I just wondered, first of all, I just want to say that and acknowledge that, because even just hearing my sister's stories, and she doesn't have to deal with probably half the stuff that you all sometimes had to deal with. How do you deal with and kind of approach the challenges of like coworkers in your, system? Because she actually had to report someone who was, just not like a healthy person. But like, do you feel like you get pushback or kind of don't feel comfortable around your coworkers, or and how do you handle that? Like, how do you like live with that on day to day?
I'll share. Thank you. I very much appreciate that. I'll share one of the things that, I've come to, learn, especially living in California, is that there are laws, and I think it's really important. There is a lot of fear for sure. And, I always encourage, in like learning, empowering, self-empowerment. And so for educators out there, there are laws, and here in California, very specifically, there are a lot of supportive laws. And so it can be really easy to get caught up in a lot of fear. And there are a lot of supportive laws. So really that I think that's one aspect of advocacy, is really learning like what is not okay in the workplace, discrimination and that kind of thing. So informing myself about laws that are on the books, I think is really important. And I really, for me at least, I view this just like my spiritual work. For first and foremost, my spiritual practice, grounding myself in what I believe in, what I stand for, my values, and bringing spirit, God, higher power into everything that I do. Going into the classroom before I teach, I always do like a prayer meditation. I'm sending love and light, and I'm bringing that into the interactions that I have. And that's not to say that things aren't challenging. Working at juvenile hall was not easy, with a lot of the staff and even the young people. But I really, for me at least, it was like spiritual work. And thank you again for your comment.
Thank you.
Indeed, thank you. And I wonder, so after you mentioned this to your principal or whoever you mentioned to about needing to have some kind of training, did that ever happen? I mean, you said that things went bad, but did it ever happen? And who were the people who were on your side, so to speak?
Yeah, it did not. I said, hey, this needs to happen. They're like, oh, they're not ready. We got stuff to do, and my boss did not protect me. She cried when we had that conversation and was like, wow, you guys have it so hard. And I'm like, cool. Glad you realized that. But it was only once HR heard, because I was working for UCLA at the time, within LAUSD. So once the HR of my department heard, they actually pulled me from the school site, and had me working exclusively from the office. And I don't know if training ever reached them. I mean, I hope so. I kind of shifted positions within the same department. And that protected me. I did not go back to that school site. And I hope, for the sake of those educators and for the students there, that they did end up having it. But I'm not sure, because I had to be pulled from the school site for HR reasons, and I think, to Chris's point, had I known all of my rights, I probably could have started listing rights from the get-go, but I didn't. I was young and non-informed. I just knew that that wasn't right. But yeah, unfortunately it took HR to say, hey, there could be a lawsuit here. Let's kind of make that separation.
So I wonder, did you feel then, from HR, did you feel like you were being protected, or did you feel like you were being pulled away from something you loved and were called to do? And so like you were the one who was paying for the misdeeds and of the other staff?
Absolutely. Something that felt misfortunate about that is that I had a good relationship with many of the students, and with some of the staff. And, I had people asking, oh, where are you? seeing them somewhere else or through email correspondence. I really, the kids get hurt by that. And I think definitely in this case, the kids were hurt by that because that was an extra body on campus that was providing support to the students and the extracurriculars and the community engagement that was no longer there. And sure, I was doing my job via the computer, but there's a lot to say about the physical presence of additional support in the school system where we're kind of outnumbered as adults. That's just, how the system is right now. So it hurt me because I enjoyed being there. And I did enjoy, I don't know if I'm frozen, sorry. I think it might've been choppy, but I did enjoy my job there and interacting with the kids and having fun. So it kind of hurt my feelings, and I can imagine it did hurt the students I was doing extracurricular programming that they no longer had. But I felt like the HR did care for me, but all in all, it felt very like a PR move because they need to protect their interests, of course. But if they were really protecting me, right, the training would have gone right into effect, and proper conversations would be had.
Mhm, mhm. Well, I agree with you. It was probably hurt the kids as much as it did you, and it hurt some of the possibility of others on staff who were supportive to you, and those who could have been supportive had they realized what was going on. So it had a lot of repercussions.
Yeah, and I think to Joseph's question, I don't know how I've kept going, to be honest with you. Like all you do is wake up the next day and you're like, do I still want this job? Yeah. Do I believe in what I'm doing? Yeah. Do I want to see those people? No. But okay. You're like, the job that I'm doing aligns with my morals and my purpose, like Chris was saying. It's very much so like your spiritual practice. You're like, what am I here to do? Why am I on this earth? Is that happening right now? Okay, then here I am. I'm doing it another day. Yeah, and I'm curious, Anis, you were in a time where there was so much less support. I can come here and recharge with all of you, but I'm curious as to how you kept going in a much scarier time.
Well, probably because of the friend base that I did have, even though folks were not out at school, in public at school, where there was that network where everybody knew who else was gay and who else you should and could align with and who could support you. And so when Bakersfield opened a chapter we had PFLAG for one thing, and we also, I was happy to hear you mention PFLAG, Chris. We had PFLAG, and we also had a chapter of GLSEN for a while. And so the folks who came to the GLSEN meetings, then it's so and so and so. If they were at schools and other schools and you didn't know them, then you began to find out who the folks were who could be in your corner and in your network in the same boat as you, so to speak. So those are the people that helped you get through that. And while you didn't talk about it at work, you still had those folks for social time or to ask advice of, or say this happened here and here and here, and what should I do, or has this ever happened to you, so you could get good advice. So I see Dorian's hand is up.
Yes, and thanks. And before we go to that, I want to make one comment, and then I want to read Greg Shay's comments. So thank you for sharing that. One thing that really struck me as something that was lost for the students and even other staff when you were taken from that on-site position is the representation. That you were someone who was a model and is and showing representation to people who may need that model, may need some examples, or may need some permission to think about themselves, where where they stand and things. And so, I'm sure that was quite a detriment. I want to read Greg Shay's comments were, wasn't that UCLA HR and not the public school, LA public school HR? Seems like as a state school receiving state money, they are required to support you.
Yeah, it was UCLA HR, not LAUSD.
Right. Okay. And Dorian has been having his hand up, so go ahead and unmute, Dorian.
Hi, folks. Thank you so much for this conversation. Let me just see. I'm not really camera ready, but I'm good. Okay, yeah, we are. So thanks so much for this conversation. As so much of this conversation seems to be, particularly with working with youth, is that parents, families, even staff don't seem to agree with LGBTQ lifestyle, right? So why should their kids be indoctrinated? Why should their kids be taught this? There's an emphasis around that LGBTQ is all about sexuality. So why should kids be taught this at such a young age? There's all of that conversation, but I love what you said, Amina, is that it's about representation, that if we're raising kids who will become adults in a society with so many different kinds of people, it's important that representation is there. My question is, as I step into, getting closer to 50 years old and being a yoga teacher, being a healthcare practitioner, I am asked often to go into the schools to talk as a mentor, or, hey, we have a group of young Black men, and we want you to come and teach them health and wellness. And I always say, well, I want to let you know from the beginning that I am queer. I want to make that clear so that when I come into the space, it is, if that comes up, if who I'm married to comes up, I am going to talk about it openly. So my question for you is, for a while, I would do it stealth. I would just go in, I would avoid conversations about who I was dating. I would avoid any LGBTQ conversation, period, especially when going into UCSD, into LAUSD. What is the conversation, suggestions about conversations that I have with educators when they invite me to come into these spaces? Once I'm in these spaces, how do I talk about LGBTQ issues should they come up? And I know that's going to be different depending upon what the age is. But as I'm introduced to, as I am presented these opportunities, what are your suggestions? How have you paved the way for yourself into these spaces, or decided not to enter some of these spaces? To teach, to be a mentor, to share yourself, to be, to represent.
You already know I just hid. But I think today, being elderly, and therefore feeling like and other people may also see me as less threatening, I think that makes a difference. And so for me, I would just, if it came up, I would just have to be honest about it. And matter of fact, not like it's a big deal, just a part of life, Okay, some people have to use a wheelchair, and some people are more outspoken, and some people are, and this is my life, And so if it comes up, I wouldn't recommend just, giving a lesson on it, but I can remember when I was taught third grade that kids wanted, their parents were having babies. They were getting brothers and sisters. Somebody asked me right out in third grade, well, how does that work? So I explained it as the best I could to that level of student. And then I went to the principal and I said, if anybody calls and says she told my kids how babies are made or how babies come, I did. So you're warned ahead of time. So anyway, that's the best I can do for it. That great question, Dorian.
Yeah, it's a really, really good question, Dorian, and I appreciate it. I think for myself, you know, again, it's depending on what age group I'm working with, because the youngest kids that I've personally worked with, 12 years old. And so, you know, I always think, you know, children's questions are indicators of what they're learning. You know, so even that question that you just shared, Annis, you know, that curiosity is a natural sort of to me that reflects that that child is asking those questions based on where they're at in their own exploration. I also think that so often, and this is where a lot for me of what's going on just in the society at large is, you know, so often the pushback, even in my own family, is around, we think that we're having conversations about sex. And, you know, I invite people to consider, you know, gender and sexuality, that's different than having conversations about sex. And so it's a lot more nuanced. And I also invite, you know, for me at least, it's really centering children's experiences. And so as an adult, like all of us are here as adults, and so we're kind of unconsciously placing our adult constructs of gender and sexuality just by virtue of having this conversation as adults. And so for me, it's really important to remind, like, to get on to center children's experiences based on where they're at and their age, and understanding that this is something that every single human being has as an expression of being a human. And so we're all exploring our own development. And so being able, for me at least, to kind of go back to your question, is I started to early on, it was really important for me, you know, I was there teaching social emotional learning. I wasn't there to teach, you know, LGBTQ specific. I wasn't doing a PFLAG panel, but what I started to do was sort of to share myself, to share, you know, or if I was using examples in the classroom, to start using in everyday conversations, examples of same-sex examples or gender, you know, non-conforming, just using that kind of thing in general conversations to help. And then if someone asked a question, then that created an opportunity for a dialogue.
I really like that, Chris, about centering children's experiences with children and with adults. If you've taken any classes, you might have had an instructor say, well, what do we already know about Africa? What do we already know about first aid, or whatever it is? We find out kind of where the students are, and that will also help us know how far to go, where the interest is, as Chris said, and where to go with what we give out in return as to what they're ready for. So and you've all probably been in classes where you've had the instructors ask that, well, what do you think about so and so, and to sort of get an assessment of where the students are.
Yeah, I love those points of any age. Like, yeah, you come in teaching what you're gonna teach. When you first asked that question, I was like, oh my God, that's a hard question. Like, great one. But yeah, I think it's definitely, you go in teaching what you're teaching, and if it comes up, it comes up. And I really believe, and I've talked to older adults and older parents about this, that any age is okay to talk about queer things. I have a friend, and I used to live with her and her child, and I'm still friends with them. And I remember one day when he was like 4, they were like, oh, his mom was like, oh yeah, we were talking about people who are they, them. And the kid who's 4 is like, yeah, some people are boys, some people are girls, some people are in between. And that's a they, them. And he's 4. And he was just like, cool, like facts, facts of life, just like, this is a dog and that's, I think just normalizing queerness or options, and also, yeah, keeping it on their level like you would any other topic. We were not going into gender identity, nothing more than there are more options than he and she, And so whenever those things come up, saying things like, why not? Oh, boys can't do this. Why not? Or something like that, right? One thing that kids will ask me is, why do you have your ears pierced? And I'm like, because I like it. I don't go, well, let me tell you the story of my gender journey and like all about gender expression. No, I'm just like, oh yeah, I like having my ears pierced. You know who also has their ears pierced? Rock stars, basketball players, artists. You know what I mean? Why wouldn't I have my ears pierced? So yeah, you can definitely meet them at any age and level they're at.
So what you're saying, Zoe, is normalize it. And
Yes.
and that's the whole point of anything.
Mhm.
Thanks for that.
I think that's so important, normalizing. I remember we used to have a bumper sticker that said gay is normal. And, we really do need to just keep being ourselves and keep being the examples. And it's so valuable. We are running low on time, but we have time for Reverend Frida. So please feel free to unmute Reverend Frida.
Oh, wow. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the panel. This is amazing. Amina, your idea is just absolutely brilliant. How exciting. And I just wanted to make a statement is that I know for me, a lot has to do with our own level of comfortability with our own sexuality. And what I'm suggesting, Amina, is that hopefully maybe next month when it's my time to speak, I would love to bring my daughter, who is a professor at West LA, and she teaches sociology. But what's so key is that she's an ally, and I would love to bring her and allow her to explain how she became an ally. And not only does she accept my sexuality or accept my identity or who I am? She celebrates it. And she is heterosexual, but she's over the gay and lesbian club on her college campus because she feels like it's so important that they have a space so that they can be authentically who they are. So I'm just saying I would just love to continue this conversation, but but also get it from the point of view of an ally. Like how do you become an ally? How do you not only become an ally, but celebrate who we really are? So I just want to thank the entire staff because this is amazing and beautiful. So thank you all for your input.
Thank you, Reverend Frida. And I love that idea. I would love to have Tiffany come and speak with you. She's fantastic. She's a great ally. And the best ally I know was in the room, Asila Calhoun. And I'll just share a fun fact that some of you know, some of you don't know, that I actually came to this community as an ally. And then my journey started and I discovered that I was bi-pan. So, and yesterday was Bi Awareness Day. So yay, full circle. Let's, so yes, let's keep this conversation going. We'll talk about next month. And we were just thinking about themes. So that's perfect. And also October 10th is coming out day. So there's, I think, lots that we can do to keep this conversation going, keep normalizing it, keep being ourselves and sharing. And Kathy wants to share something and then we'll be wrapping up.
Okay, oh, I gotta go in the other room.
Here, no, do it online. Mute.
Mute?
Yeah, you just talk because you'll talk your speaker.
Oh, okay. There we go. I just wanted to say about normalizing and representation. I started working at Metro probably 15 years ago, and someone in my work environment tried to out me per se, but I outed myself. I was like, yeah, I'm so gay that I got rainbows in my socks or whatnot. And I have always been open and out with who I am at work. I don't do it to make anybody uncomfortable, but my whole thing is I'm here. There's other people that are probably gay here that are too scared to be who they are, but I'm completely myself because it took years to get here, and there's no way in the world somebody's going to put me back in the closet. So I think it's so important for us to be brave and be out and be vocal about who we are and totally normalizing it. Like I put my socks on just like anybody else.
Rainbow socks.
Rainbow socks with unicorns.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Kathy. Thanks, everyone. Any closing words from the panelists?
Yes, because Chris has his meditation that he'd like to do.
Yes, let's do that, Chris.
Okay. So this is a meditation from my book. It's one of my favorite ones. It's called The Rule of Expectations, Visualization. According to the Rule of Expectations, if anyone's ever heard of it or hasn't, the actions we take and the decisions we make can be influenced by the expectations in our relationships. And so as it relates to young people, the most powerful ways to positively impact a young person is to affirm who they are while speaking to the potential of who they can be. And so I'd invite you to go ahead and get into a comfortable position. Close your eyes if you're comfortable and just center yourself. And take a deep breath in through your nose to the count of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and hold. And exhale to the count of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And just continue to breathe in and out. See in your mind's eye a classroom full of students. Maybe it's one of the classrooms you were in as a young person. As you look around, you see all the students talking to one another and smiling. You notice the room feels light and free. Everyone is in a good mood. The sunlight is bright and shines through a big window. You look up at the front of the room and you see a teacher with their back to the class. You notice they're writing on the board. The bell rings and they begin to write, "Who you are matters." When they turn around, you see their face and realize it's you. You're the teacher and the classroom is your life. Each person you interact with every day is someone sitting in your classroom, smiling, happy, and free. You realize that how you feel impacts everyone around you, especially young people. You begin to notice how your heart feels in the middle of your chest. It feels full of loving energy. You remember how good it feels to be able to share something positive with someone. And so you begin to smile at each person in the classroom. You see youth of all backgrounds standing in a big circle in the middle of the classroom holding hands. You see their faces and notice the warmth of their smiles. You see them achieving their dreams. You see them laughing. You see them capable. You see them free. You see them enjoying life. You see them making a positive contribution to the planet. You hold each student's smiling face in your heart, and you look them in their eyes and say, "Who you are matters. Your life matters. You have potential and are capable of achieving anything your heart desires. You deserve to be happy, healthy, and free. May you be blessed and may you know peace." Because you know this for each student in your classroom, you know this for all youth around the world. You hold a vision in your mind's eye of a planet full of playgrounds where all children are laughing and free. You now carry this vision with you everywhere you go. And so it is. You can come back to the room.
Beautiful, Chris. Thank you so much. That's really special. What a great way to end this amazing, amazing conversation. I thank you all, Chris, Annis, Zoe. Thank you for sharing your experience. Thank you to everyone who asked a question and made a comment and contributed. This is lovely. And we will make this recording available on our YouTube channel. If anyone would like to be edited out, please just contact me and let me know. But otherwise, we will air the panel. And yes, Chris has mentioned his book and where you can get that. Annis, please put yours in the chat as well. Zoe, whatever you'd like to share, please put in the chat. We want to support all of you in everything that you're doing to make the world a better place. And we're so grateful for you, for your experience and for your example. And, you know, Reverend Jennifer used to say, like, I've had this experience, and so I've done it for the collective, and may you not have to go through what I've had to go through. And so just remember that everything that we're doing and experiencing is for our benefit, our growth, and for the benefit of all beings. And so as we're wrapping up, we are going to ask that you help us keep Inspire going. Please support this community so that we can have more conversations like this, so we can continue to support people all over the world who are LGBTQ and their allies. It is so important to have this space. And I appreciated so much Zoe sharing that he can come and recharge here, no matter what is being faced, you know, in the workplace or in life. And this is a haven and a home for all of you. And so we invite you to contribute in any way you can, whether it's financially, whether it's through volunteering, and whether it, and also share it with your friends. Let people know, let folks know that we are here for them. It's really important, and we would like to continue expanding our reach to support people all over the world. So thank you for that. And I appreciate you hanging in there with us. It was a bit of a longer service today, but so well worth it. And let us just close out with a quick blessing. So we place our hands on our hearts, just giving thanks for this moment, for this community, for this experience, for this life. Grateful and thankful for everything that's in our awareness. Grateful to walk forward in love, being ourselves, being authentic, teaching through our demonstration, normalizing, being allies. How good it is to work together for the greatest good of all living beings. And we just hold this idea, this spark of light, the spark of love in our hearts. And we're grateful for our willingness to share it. So let's keep sharing it, loving ourselves and accepting ourselves first, and then expanding that out to our circles greater and greater throughout the entire world. Thank you, God. Thank you, love. Thank you, life, for this community. Thank you for this experience. We are grateful. We allow it to be, and so it is. Amen.
And so it is.
Thank you, everyone. I'm so happy and fulfilled and grateful This was really wonderful. Joseph, thank you for the music. Thank you for sharing your experiences in your heart. Everyone, check out Joseph's music and go to his showcase if you're in LA. And we will see you all back here on October 8th with Reverend Frida and her daughter Tiffany. Don't miss it. We love you all. Go forth and be a blessing. Mwah.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.